All right, zoning board, we are live. You're recording. Phone lines are opened. Go for it.
Thank you, Matt, and welcome everybody to March Madness Week. I'm sorry, it's the, welcome to the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for March 25th, 2025. We have two scheduled hearings, public hearings this evening. I'll read the first one into the record. First one is 3 Georgia Association Road, LLC, at 3 Association Road, Wayne Scott, Suffolk, tax map number 300-200-3-9.1. The size and location is 36,795 square feet at 3 Association Road in Wayne Scott. The description is to construct 1,229 square foot of first and second story additions to the existing residence, a 522 square foot of porches, new chimney, install new and replace old windows and doors, and upgrade sanitary system and revegetation on a parcel of land containing wetlands. The relief sought is the Natural Resources Special Permit pursuant to 255-420 of the East Hampton Town, and 2 variances are required for this application. Variances of 74.2 feet and 56.8 feet from 255-430 of the Town Code are required in order to construct the proposed house additions 25.8 feet and porch 43.2 feet from wetlands where 100-foot setbacks are required and any other relief necessary. The zoning district is A5 residence, 8E flood zone, elevation 10, and the secret class is type 2. And council, do we have a proper affidavit of service and posting?
Yes, I've reviewed the affidavit. Everything appears to be in order, and the board has jurisdiction over this hearing.
Thank you. So this is in my district, so I'll do the report. This is, the first photo is a photo of the posting. It's properly posted. I'll be walking around the property, starting heading towards the northeast. This is the east side of the property. You'll see the house to the left of the photo. Next. Scanning over, you'll see the west side of the property. The additions are to the right of this photo. The pool is to the left if you look at the survey. Next. Okay, now we're going to walk towards the pond. That's a pond in the back, Georgia Pond, in the rear there. Next. Taking a look at the rear of the house. Next. So this is along the water, the edge of the water. You'll see the plantings here. This is where the buffer and the easement is being proposed. Next. Taking a further look over towards, if board members, the adjoining property to the west there is our famous one. My wife really likes it, LLC, which undertook a major Phragmites removal project. Next. Taking a look now at the garage on the property. Next. You can see the slope of the property as well. And then this is over, just taking a look at the pool, and that's the last photo. Denise?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board and council. My name is Denise Shern. I'm the attorney for the applicant with offices at the Adam Miller Group at 2462 Main Street in Bridgehampton, New York. As the chairman mentioned, this is for 3 Georgia Association Road. This project site is 31,673 square feet as per the town code's definition. It's in the A5 residence district and the harbor protection overlay district. This property sits on Goose Creek, which ultimately leads us into Georgia Pond. It's currently improved with a 1- and 2-story dwelling, an artist studio, a deck, and a swimming pool. The swimming pool and the deck on the artist studio both appeared before the zoning board for relief in order to install them.
Excuse me, could you get a little closer to the mic?
Oh, sure.
Just pull it closer. Sorry. For the cheap seats here.
And that was in 2015.
That's better.
Is that better? Okay. When that took place. At that time, the planning department felt pretty strongly that the deck off of the rear of the house, which was getting, going toward the sea or going seaward, would not become habitable space in the future. So with this application, you'll see that we're not making any encroachment seaward. Everything is either above the existing structure or landward of the existing structure, just for that reason. The project includes 414 square feet of first floor additions that are landward of the residence, and 815 square feet of second story additions that are over the existing first floor, for a total of 1,229 square feet. A new 410 square foot covered porch is proposed, as is a 122 square foot screened porch and a new innovative alternative on-site water treatment septic system. There's also an extensive revegetation plan proposed. That plan has been modified to take into consideration the planning department's concern that some of the revegetation was a little too close to the house and probably could better serve the wetland if it was within the buffer. So we've revised that plan so that all of the revegetation is within that buffer area and no longer sort of hugs the, let's see, north-south, which side of it was on this side, I think. If you're looking at the house, it would have been on the left-hand side of the house from the street. It should be noted that the existing residence on the property is situated only 25.8 feet from the edge of the wetland. That is really our issue in terms of expanding the structure. We've kept it within the 50% limit on the expansion of non-conforming structures. The house itself is modest in size at 2,400 square feet. We're adding 1,229 to that, which is just under 50%, which is just under your limit for non-conforming structures. As you know, the application needs both an NRSP and 2 variances. With respect to the NRSP, we would respectfully submit that there won't be any degradation, loss, or peril placed on the natural features on the property. The existing structure that's there hasn't had any negative impact on Georgica Pond, and we don't expect that improvements over the existing house or landward of it would have that effect. As per the TAM, the applicants are amenable to A, removing the proposed basement beneath the 2-story structure. There was a question about the depth to groundwater and whether the basement might sit in groundwater. Instead of even messing with that, we'd rather just eliminate it. We made it a crawl space, so there's no longer a basement under the 2-story addition. We've modified the buffer plan, as I mentioned, to put the buffer into the buffer, all of it, the revegetation, and take some of it away from the house. And we're also amenable to a 4-foot walking path through the buffer as well. Those were the recommendations that I picked up on, at least in the TAM. But I'm sure Tyler will tell us if he has other recommendations. The 2 variances that we need for these structures, for the 2nd-story addition, we need a 74.2-foot variance in order to allow it to remain 25.8 feet from the wetland, where 100 feet is the minimum required. For the porch and the landward additions, a variance of 56.8 feet is required to construct it 43.2 feet from the wetland, where 100 feet is the minimum required. We don't believe that this will create an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood. We respectfully submit that the design, massing, and scale of the proposed residence is in harmony with neighboring properties. In fact, the property directly adjacent to this, which the chairman mentioned, had the Phragmite removal, I believe has a house on it that's approximately 13,000 square feet or somewhere in there, something that would not be allowed under the existing town code that was just modified. Whereas this application falls squarely within the GFA limitations, both as they existed in the code before the modification and as they exist in the code today. The requested variances I would submit are substantial. But there is very little additional coverage that we're adding to the property. There'll be 900 square feet of it. That's well within the maximum of 20% that's permitted, or 5,999 square feet. We're proposing 3,065. We're also proposing total coverage of 6,338 square feet, which is 20%, where 50% or 15,836 is the maximum permitted. It should be noted, and I guess I'll just repeat it here, just that the required gross floor area regulations have been met, both the existing and the old formula that was in the town code. We don't believe that the proposed variances will have a negative impact on the physical or environmental characteristics or conditions in the neighborhood. As I mentioned earlier, when I was talking about the natural resources special permit, we don't believe that the addition being over the existing structure and landward of it will have a negative impact on either Goose Creek or Georgia Pond. The difficulty here is self-created. This was purchased after these regulations came into effect. However, a finding of this, of the difficulty being self-created is not necessarily dispositive to a ZBA determination and does not preclude granting of the requested variances. I would also submit that the variances are the minimum necessary to afford the applicant relief. Here, we're dealing with an existing structure in proximity to the wetlands, and we're trying to work within that structure as opposed to tearing it down and relocating it. And that does require some relief from the wetlands just based on where the existing structure is situated. So at this point, I would conclude my presentation and ask if the board has any questions. Oh, I do have one letter of support. It is in your file, and I think you probably saw it. I can hand it up if need be, but it was on the portal as well. And this would be the neighbor on the other side. So not the happy wife neighbor, but the other neighbor.
Okay, Tyler, can you just go to the photos and bring up the photo where the buffer is going, where the easement is going? There's another one, I think. Okay, I mean, we can use that too. Yeah, that right there, that's a good one. So what do we have here that's there? Is that ornamentals, and this is landscaping that's being
It's proposed
being like maintained and cut and stuff?
These are grasses. That's just me as a layperson looking at them. They look like grasses that were cut down after the fall. But this whole area is an area that we're proposing to revegetate under our revegetation plan.
Right.
So that we'd have more woody species in there, things that can't be cut down or mowed over.
Yeah,
easily.
I think that's extremely important. I realize that.
I agree. And we'd be happy to work with the planning department if they think more woody species would be helpful. We can do that. We're open to any suggestions as far as revegetation is concerned.
And then once it's in a buffer, they wouldn't be cut down because there's been an easement over it, right? So they would just
We would definitely agree
do their thing over the winter, right?
Absolutely. We would definitely agree to an easement over it so that it can't be touched in the future and that it should be left to grow wild and natural.
Yeah.
And you'll have a 4-foot access pathway.
4 foot wide, yes, just without any substance on it, just a walking path down to the water.
So the re-veg is going to be all the dotted on the survey, the red dots?
That's, so the
which
red
extends
dots
beyond the easement also.
are the proposed, I think the proposed limits. No, you're right. I'm sorry. That's exactly right. The proposed revegetation is all the red dots that you see. And then these sort of hashed lines is the proposed edge of clearing. So you see that the revegetation comes up and along the side of the property. And then we moved the portion that was on the other side of the house so that it went right into the buffer and expanded the buffer toward the artist studio.
So you removed some of that, but on the new survey that we received on March 20th, the clearing actually is higher than it was on the prior survey. Is that because of the moving around that you're talking about?
It may be, I'll have to take a look at that, but that wasn't it was just small. It wasn't the intent to make it smaller. We can certainly add more if we
Okay,
need
it does
to.
show, not a lot, but it shows
Yeah,
like
it's
70
like two.
square feet higher.
Yeah, that's definitely a function of the movement from one side of the property to the other.
I have another question about the clearing, sorry if I may. So, needless to say, the 4,000 plus square feet of revegetation is an important step.
Yep.
To get it closer, right, to the HPOD
Absolutely.
maximum. But could you just talk about, was it not feasible, or is there an opportunity to bring it all the way into compliance?
So here, I think what they wanted to do was keep some area of the property as, have some outdoor space that's not taken up with revegetation. I think that if I talk to them about it, they may be willing to do more revegetation. I guess it would just be helpful if I knew how much the board was looking for, if that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
I know we don't want to put it over the septic system. I know it's over the leaching galleys, but not the other portions of the septic.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to, in looking at it, wondering where else I would give you revegetation that would be helpful for you.
Right. Well, when Tyler gets up to speak, maybe we'll get
Okay,
his
that'd be great.
opinion. And can I ask one more, not about the clearing?
Sure.
So you've got the proposed porch and the proposed porch, or there's two
Yes.
porches, right? One's
Yes,
covered, one's
That's
not.
right, exactly.
And if I'm correct there, it adds, almost more impervious surface
Mhm.
to the project than the actual house
True.
extensions. So, and it still is a substantial variance, right?
Right.
Is that the minimum variance necessary relative to adding this much more? And I know you're not close to the maximum, but could you
Right.
comment on that, please?
Yes, sure. I think that, as far as the numerical value of the variance, that we've asked for the minimum necessary just because of where the house is situated. But I think what you're asking is more, do we really need the proposed porches and the addition?
Because it does add meaningfully to the impervious surfaces. And I think there was some, discussion in a way about that in the last application.
Sure. I'd be happy to talk to them about that. I'd feel remiss if I gave you an answer that was wrong. But I'd be happy to talk to the clients about it.
Thank you. I just wanted to raise it into the record, opinion. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Being that the property slopes pretty severely over towards the pond,
Yes.
Mhm.
and I know there's a condition of gutters and leaders. I
Yes.
just want to make sure that the entire house is
Has gutters.
incorporated into gutters and leaders, not
Yes.
just the addition.
That's exactly right. Yes.
And this move away from a basement in an area because we have concern about groundwater, the new section will reflect the fact that we're going to be out 2 foot above groundwater?
It's
Lowest part of
just
the
going to have a
footing?
crawl space, and it's actually further than 2 foot above
Oh,
groundwater.
it's
at
more
that
than 2
point.
foot above
So
to
the
the
new
bottom of the footing.
plans, which I think Tyler is kindly bringing up, show on the section, let's see. Okay. Water, is that elevation 4.8?
That's the question.
Okay. 2 feet, okay. So we do show a 2 foot, it's exactly a 2 foot separation between the bottom of the crawl space and where groundwater is situated.
That groundwater is based on test holes. That's what we're using for their
But we're
standard
doing an
here.
average,
Average amount.
highest groundwater instead of
It's a
just
very
the test
variable.
holes.
Groundwater there, right?
Exactly,
Okay, so this is above 2 foot above the average.
average, exactly.
Yes, there is.
So what was I'm sorry, net change between, I don't know, I don't remember how deep the basement was versus how deep the crawl is, just so I can put it in perspective.
I don't recall, to be
Okay.
honest with you. It may be in Tyler's TAM, how deep the
It might have been, the depth of the basement might have been on the plan, so.
Okay. So Tyler is just telling me that based on his his analysis, the basement was 3 feet deeper than the crawl space. So we definitely would have had a water issue if we kept the basement.
Any other
Yeah,
questions?
so it's like a 5-foot difference, right?
To hear from planning.
Okay, thank you. Tyler?
Good evening, Tyler Borsak for the Planning
Hi,
Department.
Tyler. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, so the subject parcel is located on the east side of Association Road in Waynescott. The property is located along the Goose Creek tributary of Georgia Pond, which is a coastal pond designated as a locally significant coastal fish and wildlife habitat. Georgia Pond is separated from the Atlantic Ocean by a barrier dune and a beach, and is opened to the ocean as a result of coastal storms and seasonal mechanical excavation of the inlet coordinated by the town trustees. As such, the elevation of the surface water and groundwater tables can vary substantially over the course of a calendar year. The limited water circulation within Goose Creek tributary may make this area more sensitive to the cumulative impacts from the surrounding land uses that compared to other areas around the pond. The wetlands surrounding and the surface waters of Georgia Pond provide several vital benefits to the town as a whole, associated with environmental and wetland habitat benefits, as well as aesthetic and recreational benefits. The current application is proposing to construct additions over the existing first story of the residence and new 2-story additions to the southern landward side of the residence. The closest setbacks for additions to the residence are located within the existing residence of the building. Excuse me. The closest new additional footprint proposed is still located only approximately 48 feet from the edge of wetlands, which would in and of itself be a significant variance considering it's on the landward side of a very non-conforming residence. The project is proposing to expand an existing 2,464 square foot 2-story residence located 24.9 feet from the edge of wetlands, an additional 1,229 square feet or 49.8%. The proposed additions are essentially the largest that could be contemplated by the board, considering the 50% cap in section 255-860 of the town code. The 50% cap is a hard limit on the ZBA's ability to consider perpetual or significant expansions of a pre-existing nonconformities, not a guaranteed right of expansion. And expanding such a nonconforming structure by nearly 50% needs to be carefully considered. The impacts of the existing residence and proposed additions are further exacerbated by the best setback the applicant is able to achieve for a sanitary system upgrade being only 108.6 feet. The core of this application is the question of, is a 3,693 square foot residence less than 25 feet from wetlands and with a sanitary system less than 110 feet from wetlands an appropriate size for the constraints of the parcel? Or would a smaller additions be able to achieve the same purpose without adverse impacts to the surrounding wetlands? Since the planning departments issued our assessment of the project, the applicants made several revisions to address other issues that were raised in our assessment. This includes a new basement that was proposed to be below the highest expected groundwater elevation and the location of some revegetation buffer. The revegetation has been shifted to provide a better buffer to the wetland, but as pointed out in the assessment, the makeup of the plan itself was not sufficient and requires changes prior to a building permit being issued. The current plan calls for a large amount of ferns and grasses and asters, and a standard practice for a revegetation is to include a majority of native woody vegetation, with grasses less substantial vegetation intermixed between those more robust plantings. A revegetation, which includes a majority of woody vegetation, is less likely to be cleared and trimmed, as appears to be currently ongoing on the parcel with what vegetation exists in the current buffer. And additionally, the basement is now proposed to have a crawl space, which we discussed already, and will meet a 2-foot separation from the highest expected groundwater elevation. Other than that, I can answer any questions that you might have.
Tyler, I know, I'm sure we're going to want a robust buffer here. So, we're going to expect the planning department to keep, look out for that woody species, of course. This is Georgia Pond, and it's in dire. But the question I have is, there appears to be some significant environmental improvements on this property. Can you just speak to that outside of,
Certainly the revegetation that is proposed would be a benefit. Improving what is there and looks like it's getting trimmed yearly would certainly be a benefit as well. That was part of, I think, the last application that was in front of the zoning board back in, let's say 2014, but I don't remember the date.
15.
That was right, 2015.
2015. So that I think that was part of that application, and it looks like it just gets, it was the majority of grasses, which is something we generally don't want to see. For obvious reasons, it does get trimmed, either purposefully or not. So, making that better, increasing the size of it, certainly are benefits. Upgrading the sanitary system is a requirement likely in this case, but a benefit nonetheless. And it's in the best location they can put it. Certainly a benefit. The weighing of the board here is that enough to justify the addition? That's the crux
Are they
of it.
amenable to expanding the re-veg to the west side of the residence to better meet?
Certainly,
Maximum
they
clearance?
could increase it. There's not a lot of room around the
But
residence.
little
They would
bit
need
in
another
HPOD will help.
2,500 square feet roughly to
That's-
comply with
That's
HPOD.
substantial.
That would be quite a bit more. They don't have a lot of yard space. If you go to the property and walk around, there's not a ton of yard space, which is why we were comfortable with what they proposed. But certainly you could request some more, especially on the seaward side of the house.
That's exactly right.
Another 2,500 would just about bring it to conforming.
Right,
I
exactly.
mean, I think because it's HPOD, the closer we get to conforming with the maximum clearing limits, the better.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's really my concern with the application.
You've already made this comment, but when I was looking at this, I know the variance is required for the septic, but it really isn't the only place you could put it. It's for as far away as we could get it and get it on this parcel.
Currently, no, right, yes. No variance is required for the sanitary because it's an upgrade.
Oh, yes, okay.
So in this case, it doesn't need a variance, it doesn't need an NRSP. But as the property is today, it's the best location they could put it. Ideally, they'd put it in the northwest corner, but that's not possible.
okay, any other questions?
Yes, please.
Comment, there's some trees right near where the IA system's going. You can see them on the survey, they do have them also. One's very close to it. I'm wondering if those trees are going to be,
There's really nothing under there now. It's just the trees. There's no understory really at this point.
trees are nice.
To be spoken of. That's what they'll be adding essentially over that area would be actual, understory vegetation.
Okay,
Tyler, I just want to go back to your TAM for a second.
Sure.
It's on the second page, and you quote from you say it's the 2015 ZBA application, in the application, the planning department wrote,
Right.
and I won't read the whole thing, but the last sentence was, the planning department would object to the future establishment of impervious surfaces or a foundation, the location of the proposed deck, right, that was on the seaward side at the
Right.
time. The proposed deck, due to the close proximity of Georgia Pond wetlands, even with the incorporation of dry wells to capture the runoff. So you put this in the TAM, but I want you to share sort of how you reflect on the whole application relative to that. I'm saying.
Yeah,
I hope
well,
I'm
yeah,
saying that in a
essentially pointing out what had occurred,
Right.
back in 2015, what our concerns were, and the fact that it seems that the applicant took that to heart and avoided going seaward, essentially in this case, and not,
Okay.
because a lot of times having a deck is sort of a reason to then say, oh, we want to put an addition over to it. It's already
Right.
improved, and in this case, they didn't do that.
Was it covenanted at the time of the last application? I didn't see it in the determination.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I don't
Okay.
think it was. I can certainly look through the determination again, but I don't believe it was.
Okay.
I think it was just a suggestion in the assessment, and I think the board might have mentioned it in the determination, but I can't remember the determination well enough off the top of my head.
thank you. Any other questions?
Okay,
I'm
good.
Thank you. Denise, you want to? Oh, anybody in the
No,
public?
I didn't see it. I always need to double check myself.
How are you?
How are you? Good afternoon, members of the board. I'll keep my comments brief tonight.
Announce yourself.
Yes, John Borkwin of Greenberg Trowig, 2317 Montauk Highway in Bridgehampton.
Okay.
We represent the neighbor to the west at 1 Association Road, which is the My Wife Really Likes It LLC. Our firm is only retained recently in connection with this matter, but a cursory review of the application documents raises some questions and concerns on my client's part. Overall, we concur with the planning staff that this application should be carefully considered. And accordingly, we simply ask the discussion of this application be continued and the record held open for comment.
But
That's,
there's been
uh,
adequate notice on this, so I don't know if, counsel, what's your thought on that?
Could we keep it open for written comment, if anything, written submissions?
From,
We have to, we haven't established that yet. But
How is this different than any
yeah,
other?
exactly.
why we
I don't
did-
see why we would leave it
There was a
open.
circumstance you could cite that showed that this was different than other applications, but every week we allow the public to come forward and make their comments. This is your opportunity. I don't know that we're going to leave it open.
Yeah.
That's up to the
It was
chair.
noticed properly, the applicant did everything they were required to do.
Yeah, we had the notice receipts, correct?
I'm going to do this. We're going to be hearing back from council on whether or not we're going to leave the record open. We'll make that decision at that time, but typically it's not a policy of this board. You've had plenty, the neighbor has had notice under the law, and you've had opportunity to comment, and we're not interested in litigating this on the public side. So we'll hear from council and from Denise, and we'll decide in a minute.
Understood. Thank you.
Can I just ask the planning board one thing? Because that application, Mr. Chair, for the one, there was a Phragmites removal. So forgive me, I'm not as familiar. Is there a Phragmites issue along this shoreline, or is there any remediation? Okay, just wanted to check. Thank you.
Denise, come on.
Yes. So I do think that for the purpose of talking to my client about the few issues that all of you brought up, that I will need it left open to be able to respond to your concerns and get you revised plans.
How much time do you think you'll need?
I don't think I need more than 2 weeks, honestly.
Okay. Okay, so board, we're going to leave the record open for 2 weeks. At that point, I think we should allow public comment, but we're not going to allow it, at that time, it'll be closed. We're not going to respond to public comment. It's public comment as is there. So we're not, like I said, we're not interested in litigating this on a public side. So, council, you'll be able to submit a comment. Thank you.
Online. You want to see if there's anyone on the phone line?
Yes. Matt, is there anybody else in public here?
You have 0 callers. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, we'll make a motion for 3 Georgia Association Road LLC, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-200-3-9.1, to close the public hearing, but keep the record open for the applicant to get back to us with some requested information and to receive a public comment as requested.
Second.
Concur.
Concur.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I just happen to be on the next one, so I'll just stay right here.
Oh, you're here for the second one? Okay, great. Next, we have Susanna Plaza at 18 6th Street in Kingstown Park, Springs, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-76-7-11.5. And the size and location is 16,000 square feet at 18 6th Street, Kingstown Park, lots 5 through 12, block 8, map number 499, filed November 16th in 1911 in Springs. The description is to allow an approximately 735 square foot patio to remain within side and front yard setbacks, and to allow a shed to remain within side yard setbacks. The relief sought are 3 variances are needed for this application. Variances of 0.3 feet, 11.3 feet, and 0.1 feet are needed from 255-1110 of the Town of East Hampton Town Code to allow the patio to remain 19.7 feet from the front yard lot line where 20 feet is the minimum required, 3.7 feet from the southern lot line where 15 feet is the minimum required, and a shed to remain 9.9 feet from the eastern property line where 10 foot is the minimum required, and any other relief necessary. The zoning district is B residence, X flood zone, and the secret class is type 2, and council, do we have proper affidavit of service and posting?
Yes, I've reviewed the affidavit. Everything appears to be in order, and the board has jurisdiction over this hearing.
Thank you. Vice Chair, this is in yours. Right?
Yes, it is. Thank you. The property, I did do a photo of the posting, which at the time, when I did my field inspection, was on the ground, but the applicant was good enough to post it again right away, and I think it only went down because of the rain, and they do have a proper affidavit, so I'm willing to go forward. I'm standing on 6th Street, and I'm looking at an 1895 square foot, 2-story residence with a gravel driveway. Next, please. Again, I'm just taking a shot from 6th Street to give you a visual of the house we're looking at. Next. Okay, we jumped right. Oh, this is the backyard. I'm in the rear of the property now, and this is actually one of the patios in question. Wanted to remain like 19.7 feet from the lot line where 20 feet is required. Next, please. This is just another visual looking at it from another direction. It's just an extension, which you'll see on your survey. There's a step down, a planter, and an extension of the patio. Next, please. And this is just, again, a photo of the, it's very close to the rear, to the lot line, so it was difficult to get a full picture of the patio. So this is just another visual of the patio. Next, please. Just another, this is a step down where the patio continues. Next, please. This is just me. Look, this is in the rear of the residence. I'm standing on the patio taking a photo here. Next, please. This is the, again, the front of the house. Next, please. There should be pictures in here. All right. So this is the shed. And I took a couple of different shots of the shed because they're asking this to remain 9.9 feet from the eastern property line where 10 is required. So I'm just sort of giving you different visuals on, different perspectives on how it looks. Next, please. Next, please. I think that might be it. Next, please. I think that might be it, Morgan.
Yeah, there's some like accessory structure.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yes, and there is an outdoor shower that we just went by that is on the survey, so that's a legal structure. And then there's AC units and that on, there they are, right before the shed. So thank you, Morgan.
Thank you. Denise?
Good evening. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you say Denise? Okay.
I know, I don't know, I want to talk when he says Denise. I'm very confused tonight.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board and council. My name is Denise Shern. I'm at the Adam Miller Group, 2462 Main Street in Bridgehampton, New York, here tonight for Savannah Plaza, who's in the audience with me tonight with her husband, Paul. I just wanted to hand up an aerial photograph that might be helpful during my discussion.
Thank you, James.
Thank you. Thank you.
So as member Savary said, this is a site it's within the urban renewal map. It's a 16,000 square foot lot.
I'm sorry, one more time, just get a little closer.
Louder? Oh, okay.
Thank you, sorry.
Oh, thank you. That's
Thank
easier.
you.
It is currently improved with a 2-story residence, deck, shed, and patio. The applicant is proposing to legalize a patio that was constructed in approximately 1999. It initially was made with slate and sand, and I don't know if the board recalls this, but around that same time period, we modified the town code so that sand and slate became a structure and had to meet setbacks. So at the time this was built, they may have been under the impression that sand and slate was not required to meet setbacks. However, it is now, and this patio does need to meet those setbacks, which is why we're before you tonight. There is the existing 735 square foot patio is now no longer brick and sand. It actually has concrete in the middle of it as well. So that's another reason why we need to meet these setbacks. The variances that we need are two for the patio. One is 0.3, one is to allow it to remain 0.3 feet. I'm sorry, 19.7 feet from the front yard lot line where 20 feet is required for a 0.3 foot variance. And the other one is 11.3 feet to allow it to remain 3.7 feet from the southerly lot line where 20 feet is required. And I just want to point out on the aerial that I handed out that you'll see that behind, first of all, the house is situated at the extreme end of the property. So there's not a lot of backyard space to begin with for outdoor living. And the property immediately behind us is a double lot. And for some reason, they put their house on just one side of the double lot. So it might look like we have a vacant lot behind us, but on the urban renewal map, that has to be one piece. So it will always remain one piece. So there's actually a whole wooded area behind this patio, in addition to the screening that we have on our property. And there's an existing stockade fence that runs through the screening that's in some disrepair that we'd like to repair as well, to give both the applicant privacy and to, reduce any sort of noise or aesthetic that might occur. But I really don't think that anyone can actually physically see this patio where it is right now. We spoke to the neighbor who is directly behind us. He did express support for the application, but when I asked him to put that in writing, I could tell there was a bit of a language barrier, and I didn't want to propose to write it for him. So I just left it that, he told me on the phone and he told Ms. Plaza on the phone that he was okay with the variances as requested. We did get a letter of support from the other neighbor that is, let's see. Yes, exactly. Thank you. And that should be contained in the board's file as well. That neighbor pointed out that Susanna and Paul are sort of stewards of their property. They haven't overdeveloped it. They're not raucous. They're not loud. The patio is a very innocuous use for them. It doesn't create any noise disturbance. It's not associated with a pool, so there's no pool noise associated with it. It's really an existing structure that's been there for, 36 years at this point, and has created no problems for anybody. With respect to
the last one you're mentioning is the property to the east?
That is, I'm sorry, I'm bad with.
This is the.
Directional one that commented.
Okay, that's the one that commented.
Sent in a letter.
Thank you.
Sure. With respect to the shed, the intention was to put it 10 feet from the property line, but it ended up 9.9 feet. So we need a 0.1 foot variance in order to allow the shed to remain where it is. Otherwise, we'll need to pick it up and move it over 0.1 feet. In terms of the variance standards, we would submit that neither the patio nor the shed create an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood. The patio is essentially invisible from neighbors. It's screened with existing vegetation, and it also abuts an area of a property that is does not contain a house. The benefits sought by the applicant can't be achieved by anything other than an area variance. This is because the existing house, as I said, is situated on the one extreme side of the property, not leaving, a great area for backyard improvement back there. The variances requested are substantial for the patio, and that is a function of where that house is situated with regard to the lot line. The proposed variances will not have an adverse impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. And while the difficulty is self-created, I would note that that factor is not dispositive for a ZBA determination. And also just point out that the applicant did build this patio with her father at the time. And I believe there was an assumption that brick or slate and sand did not need to meet setbacks. So I think it was an honest mistake that they're now trying to correct. And that's the summry of my presentation, and I would just open it to any questions the board
I
might
have a
have.
question basically too, is it's, in my experience, anything less than 6 inches is usually not considered, they grant the C of O. You have two
Yes.
of these variances that are
I
within
know.
that tolerance level. So if it were not for 11.3, would this even be before us?
I don't think so. I think that they would have granted those two variances, obviously they're not granting variances, but
The C of
the
Os.
building inspector does have the ability to waive up to 6 inches. And so I don't think we would be here if it wasn't for the greater variance that we need from the patio in the rear. Thank you.
So the
So
patio.
this came about, I'm sorry, you want to
No,
go?
go ahead, go ahead.
This came about because they wanted to get a CO?
That's exactly right.
Okay, so I have one question.
Sure.
I just don't understand. A building permit was issued in 2022 for a 440 square foot patio.
Right.
So how does that become 735 square feet?
That
I mean, they had permission, they knew enough to know they had to get a building permit
I don't know if it was the same.
for, because it says the intended location for the patio is not clear based on plans associated. I'm just curious
Right.
as to, they did go about it the right way. They got permission to build a 440 square foot patio.
I think
But I'm just curious how it became,
Member Savarese, if you don't mind, I think my client knows the answer to that question.
all right, thank you.
Go right to-
Hi,
Just announce yourself and
Susanna.
I'll have to swear you
I'm
in.
Susanna Plaza from 18th Sixth Street.
I need to swear you in. You swear to affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
do. So that one, the yellow one, I believe, that one that I got a permit for, that's when we did the new addition. So that one was just a couple of years old. The one right behind the house, like the other one, that's the one that's been in there since, like, I purchased the house. I put it in with my father. Does that make sense? Is that what the question was?
So the smaller patio was put in 1999.
Correct.
The larger patio was put in when she
So when I'm
renovated.
looking at this is what I'm looking at. This is what's before us, no?
Well, she's saying
Yes.
the,
That one,
mean-
that yellow one, that's the new patio, so I did get a permit for that. So it was not until I went to close out my permit that then they said that then the other one was also,
I understand.
yes. So I
Okay,
never got a
okay.
permit for that one because the other one right behind it,
Right.
that one's been there for like 30-something years.
Okay.
But it wasn't
That
until I
was-
went to close out the
Thank you.
permit that they got that.
Thank you for the clarification.
thank you.
I'm good?
Did you have a permit for the shed, though?
Yes, she did.
Yeah,
Yes, they did.
it was,
There's been a letter about it.
Yes, there was a building permit for the shed.
Yes,
So-
that's in the TAM, actually.
So the biggest problem here is that to the rear of the property, we have this patio very close to the property line. I was there today, and obviously it's fairly well vegetated now, so it's well screened. So if they ask your applicant if they're willing to, if there was to move forward, covenant that vegetated buffer would stay there, because it's very close to the property line. And I could say, that's why I asked you in which direction did you get the approval
Sure.
from the neighbor, because I think that is something that if this was to move forward, you're going to get it in perpetuity. And we're asking ourselves what's going to happen on the corner of that deck if it's not well protected. So I think you have to move forward with offering a covenant here for us to even consider it.
And I also think we're not making a decision tonight. That's
Right.
just,
Right. just a recommendation, and
A
I'm
recommendation.
sure that that recommendation
For
is
one
fine.
member.
They want the screening just as much as anybody else, so I don't think they'll have any problem with having a covenant on the property to keep that screening in place.
There's another sketch, sort of, it's not really a formal survey. It's in the existing conditions memo.
Okay.
And it precedes what Ms. Plaza was just, she was just showing us. So it was, I think, it's dated 4/2/21, decision markouts. And it's handwriting also with a little square, much different than the yellow. And it says, this is where the new slate patio is. So I'm
Thank you.
just trying to, I understand that this thing,
I see.
you know, again, it's hard because there's one thing to have a survey, there's another thing to have things that are hand-drawn.
Right.
So,
And I don't think that survey is reflecting what I have in my
I
hand
don't think so,
at all.
you know.
If you go back, roll
If you
back,
go back-
Morgan, for a minute.
If you go back to the April 19th, 2023 update. All right, there you go. Jen, see what I mean?
Yeah, no,
better
I was
depicts
referring to
what's in
this
front
one
of us.
just now, right?
It's what
yeah.
we saw in the field today, rather than that
Correct.
other survey you
correct.
had up a
Because
minute
that
ago.
has the house
So
extension
now,
on it.
just so I'm clear,
Yes,
the permit was issued on what part of this patio?
on the patio, this portion of the patio.
That portion. So the other portion of the patio was just put in without a
Exactly.
building permit?
That's right.
Okay,
Got it.
that was
Right.
that was where I was trying to go. Thank you for being.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Okay, any other questions?
no, I'm good.
Okay. Morgan?
Good evening, Board. Morgan Slater for the Planning Department.
Morgan, do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I'm just going to kind of go over that building history, the recent building history at least. So there have been 2 building permits issued in the last 5-ish years, one being for that patio extension. I mean, we've been looking at the plans. They are hand-drawn. That's just what's associated with the building permit. And then the second building permit was for an addition, which I'll pull up now. That does depict the shed. It's kind of interesting, the language of the building permit, because the building permit was issued for a shed in a conforming location. I mean, I can only assume what the intention of that was, because where that shed is depicted on this building permit survey is very not conforming.
Right.
Right.
So perhaps the intention was that the shed was to be moved to a conforming location, prior to the issuance of a CO, but it's just not depicted like that on the survey. So, since there isn't a survey depicting the shed in a conforming location associated with the building permit, it's hard to say, if that 6-inch leeway that the building department usually grants for as-built conditions could be granted, because there wasn't really any paperwork showing where the shed was supposed to be. Kind of a complicated way to explain it, but it's ultimately in a more conforming location than where it was. Again, this is also in an urban renewal area, so the northwestern property line functions as a front yard lot line, so there's also that additional small variance from the front yard lot line needed for the patio extension that had the building permit issued for it with those hand-drawn plans. And I can answer any other questions the board may have about the property or its history.
Any questions?
Okay.
So there were 2, as you said, 2 building permits. The first one in 2021 was for the patio, and then there was the subsequent one for the extension. But again, there was no closing out of the 2021 building permit with the CO. So neither of the 2, the work is complete on both of them, but the C of O
I believe that is the case.
for neither one. Okay, because I don't see it here. I mean, I'm reading the building permit, and it just says, build 440 square feet patio per all applicable codes.
Yeah, that's standard language for most building permits. So, the plans that are associated with that permit are what we have to go off of with what was proposed.
Thank you. Anybody in the public like to address this application? Is there anybody online?
You have 0 callers. Thank you.
Do you have any closing remarks? Okay, thank you. Can we have a motion?
In the matter of Susanna Plaza, 18 6th Street, Kingstown Park in Springs, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-76-7-11.5, I make a motion that we close the public hearing and record.
Second.
Concur.
Concur.
Concur. Thank you.
Thank you, board.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you. Next, we go into post-hearing decisions. Our first one is Rowley at 69 Seaside Avenue, Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-32-4-20. And it's a discussion of new materials. Board members, if you remember, this was a hearing, I forget the date of it, but we did make a decision on this that was going to go to 4-1 denial of the application for an extension of a deck in very restricted wetlands. Since that, we've had a request from the agent of the applicant to open the record to submit a revegetation plan where they're proposing some more revegetation. So at this point, I'd like to open that up to discussion. Was this yours, Ed?
It was mine.
Want to lead us off?
Yeah,
please?
I will, thank you. This is a very recent decision we made, and several of us felt strongly that on this very, very constricted lot, we looked at the history of the approval that led to the development of the lot, and we felt that previously the board had very strong statements about what they were willing to allow happen on this property. Now, this is in a very sensitive area, so this house completely surrounded with wetlands, and the area is prone to flooding, and there's lots and lots of community concern about it. At that point, I said that I denied it along with 3 other board members. This issuance we got this week was for an additional 200 square feet of vegetation that's in, I would define it in the most sensitive part of the lot, although it, as I've said, is surrounded completely by wetlands. So in any direction here, you're faced with constrictions. I still feel the same way about the previous decision made by the board. I think that what was decided then was done with very careful consideration for what there is. I will say, we say the map is up there now, the new offer. But I have reconsidered this based on the fact that we are adding a deck where we talked about it last time during our deliberations. We're extending an existing deck out to the front corner of the house that allows them to have more deck space. We denied it on the basis that we didn't see any other improvement on the lot. But here is 200 square feet of improvement. I have my feelings are mixed about moving forward in approval like this, but I do think when we look at the net benefit to the town, I think this is a net benefit. 200 square feet of vegetation in that location, which I think when you're out on the site, you realize can be critical, is one. So I am looking to change my vote and now approve this application based on the new information that we received this week.
Okay, thank you, Terry.
Still thinking. Yeah, I denied this originally, and I don't know, I'm still torn on this. It's the deck. The fact that they have to dig some piles in to get this deck and bothers me. Additional revegetation would be nice, particularly on this property. I would agree to the deck with the revegetation, but I do want a condition that none of that decking on the first story will ever come before us to be enclosed, to be made into anything else. And habitable space or just enclosed at all. And as we know, it's not on the survey, but there's a shower that appeared right near the northern part of the property that was never permitted, and that shower be removed, and that the fencing be removed around the house that wasn't supposed to be there.
Okay, thank you, Denise.
I'm going to stand by my original decision. The size of this lot is 20,000 square feet, and the whole lot area without wetlands is 8,586.27 square feet. It's a highly constrained lot. Due to the presence of the wetlands, the area is also prone to flooding and chronic drainage. The property also had very significant variances granted in 2017, and there's already decking on the house, which I believe is a roof deck. So I don't think, because of the, I do think if this is approved, it's in an all, do think it will cause a detriment to the environment. And I am going to stand behind my denial because I don't think it meets the standard for grant.
Thank you. You're going to keep your,
Yes, I'm not going to go through all the reasons why I approved them, but I was expecting, based on the public hearing, about 129 square feet of revegetation, so this would exceed that, so I will not be changing my approval.
thank you. I look at this similar to member Johan. I think that the benefit to the additional revegetation outweighs the harm that the deck is going to be impacting on this site. I think decks typically have little impact, in my opinion. And you're concerned about the piles. I think piles are more environmentally friendly than to having wood or CCA going into the ground. So that would be my thought process. But I just think the benefit of the added vegetation outweighs the harm that the deck will bring. So therefore, I'm going to change my vote as well. However, I agree with the conditions that Member Berger brought up. But there's no definition as to what type of re-veg. And I think that we as a board should try to define that somewhat. I know we can't define it in terms of species and all that. That we'll leave up to the zone with the planning department. However, I think the revegetation should be consistent with that was in the previous determination that was accepted during that in that thing, and that's acceptable.
I forgot, was there an easement over anything down there, or no? Because is this a buffer now, or?
It's all over the top.
Right, but there's nothing down there. But,
Not down there, I don't believe so.
but I agree, it should be the most robust,
Yeah.
Woody native veg that it can be.
Yeah, I agree with that. We leave that to the planning department.
Right.
With the
And a condition, the
removal of
shower. Yeah.
And the condition that they'll never enclose those.
That's correct.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Good counsel. Thank you.
I'm going to be recused from the next
Yes.
2 agenda items. Yep.
I'm going to come up.
Our alternate member can enter the bench.
I yield my seat.
You feel so lucky, John. Okay, our next decision is Devon Yacht Club, 300 Abraham's Landing Road, Narragansett, Suffolk, tax map number 300-127-3-16 and 17. It's a discussion on the memo to the planning board. Brief history on this is the planning board has gone through their process is going through their process with the Devon Yacht Club and has requested a zoning board to look at where they were and where this application is presently at, as to whether our thought or process is whether that would suffice a determination from this board, either positive or negative. When we deliberated, made a decision with the recused, we were a 2-2 split on this. So we're bringing in our alternate member to weigh in on this there was some additional information that was submitted and opined by the planning department on the tennis courts. We have that now. And as far as, and as drainage as well, we have that now. We've looked at it, we've read it. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to John Thorson, our alternate member. And John, you want to take it
Can I just ask for a clarification?
Yes,
Mr.
please.
Chairman? Tonight, we're making a decision that's not going to lead to a determination. Will that come later? Or the decision we make tonight
So
lead to
we're
a
not,
determination?
my viewpoint on this is that we should enter this conversation as if we're making a decision. However, our decision is going to end up as a recommendation. This is ultimately going to come back to us. And that's when we're going to make our final decision, because things might change in the planning board, right? So we just have to be aware of that. Am I right in explaining that, counsel? So with that, my advice would be to enter this as if, in your thought process, as if we are going through a decision, only we're going to end up coming up with a recommendation to the planning board. John?
Thank you, Chairman Deline. My concern is primarily about the intensification of use. I believe that the square footage, the GFA, is increasing by 43% overall. I think the numbers are 60% for the clubhouse and a smaller number for the residents, for the staff. The applicant represented in a letter to this board that they were willing to covenant that there would be no increase in membership. And I think it might be tempting in the future for the Devon Yacht Club with a brand new structure that has taken many years to complete and maybe upwards of $25 million from start to finish to try to maximize the new GFA. So I'm interested in seeing if it can be further covenanted that to help keep the intensification of use as it is now. In addition to covenanting that there'll be no increase in membership, that there'd also be no increase, and I believe this has been agreed to, no increase in the number of seats in the dining room, no increase in the number of staff living on the property, no changes to when the club is open, that the season that it's open now would remain, and that there'd be no change in the amenities or activities of the club. Those would be my concerns and things that I'd like to see conditioned for my approval.
Okay, and you're just, if you could go, maybe go a little bit further in your reasoning for those conditions in your mind.
Well, to help maintain that there'd be no increase in the intensification of use.
As far as affecting the environment.
Yeah, as far as the environmental impact, additional sewage discharge, additional vehicles, more traffic, more garbage. Yeah, okay. I think that about sums it up.
Terry, you have any input?
Yeah, I mean, I have the same concerns I had. I did discuss this with the planner, and I have the documentation that was put out by Lisa LaCorey regarding the tennis courts and the drainage. There is no drainage on this property now at all. And basically it comes down to that the engineer's report in January states that they believe that the drainage plan could be approvable and meet code with some other adjustments, but we don't know what those are yet. And the planning department also agrees that it could be, the drainage plan could be done such that it would become code compliant. So if that happens, I am willing for them to move forward at this point, go back to the planning board and get the rest of the documentation that we would require before we actually make an approved decision on this.
Okay. Denise?
I too have read the additional documentation, and I really don't have anything to say. It has not really changed my mind. And I stand by the record I made at the zoning board work session on February 11th, 2025.
Okay. Ed?
Yeah, I think some of the concerns that we had were answered in Lisa's response letter, Lisa LaGrace's response letter. She went back and looked at what was being proposed for drainage. She made some very positive comments about the drainage. I'm going to make my own, but I also think that this is a tweak, and I don't think it's a major obstacle in my mind. I do think that what was brought up by fellow member Thorson, that's been the primary concern, is about the amount, the additional coverage here, the additional square area that's been added. I do think, though, that during their presentation that Devin did make it clear that they were going to hold the membership to 400. I think it was already agreed upon that any additional usage was not going to be proposed, that it would continue to be function the way it was. It's a lot larger, something for us to consider. But in terms of the impact that was mentioned by Member Thorson, I don't anticipate that. If we were to suddenly find that somebody wanted to turn it into a catering hall, they'd have to be back in front of us for usage anyway. So I'm not as concerned about that. I recognize exactly what was said. When I started looking at this project as a whole, and I see things like the housing that's over on Bendigo coming out, the repair of the bridge to the wetlands, which was a block to natural drainage. The fact that there's no drainage on the property now, and drainage has been proposed in several areas, things that are going to happen that are a net positive in terms of the impact on the environment. And I also juxtapose that with the fact that this is an existing 100-year-old site usage. Forget the notion of the club, just as a site usage. As the site usage, it's been used continually with C of Os that have been issued along the way for various structures. I have to look at what can we do to ensure that those structures are replaced, reset, reconditioned, repaired in some ways. That's a net positive. I look at this application and I think that they addressed many of those things. I think the buildings are improved, the septic is improved, the drainage is improved, and the damage to the wetlands is improved. Are there things that still have to be decided when we get a final proposal, when we see the final drainage, as was member Berger? I think we can contend those. I think there's room for discussion. But as far as it moving forward in a positive way, I've looked down on the viewscape. I think the viewscape is one that I found satisfactory. I think the notion of what it looks like to me from both the beach and from the adjacent roadway, I think that's very acceptable. I went down through every one of these items that they were proposing, and I saw basically net positives. Definitely some things that are up for discussion, but I think this is a very worthy application to move forward back to the planning board. And when it comes back to us, we can make our final decision. So I'm willing to stay with moving it forward, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'm the same way. I look at the recent memo from Lisa LaCory as further verification that the environmental impact or the environmental improvements on this property and what's going to happen is going to be greatly increased and improved. So I spent the most time on the last time. I don't need to spend any more time on that. I still stand behind my decision. So let's summarize. This is not a decision. This is a recommendation to the planning board. So we have a 4-to-1 recommendation to the planning board that most likely this will get approved in this condition. I would like to, I think Member Thorson brings up some legitimate concerns regarding intensification of use and preserving that. But I also make note that the Devon Yacht Club has also stated that that would be the case, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know how to say that in a letter to the planning board, but some notes should be.
Yeah, and so the board and the public is aware. This was discussed with the director of the planning department, Tina and myself today, just in terms of where we go from here. Lisa LaCory will be rewatching the discussion tonight and the prior discussion. She's going to formulate a letter, and it will be more nuanced. Terry, don't worry, like everything that you said and your concerns should be picked up in that. She's going to run it past me to make sure that it also looks good to me, and then we're going to run it past the board first before it is transmitted to the planning board. So you guys will all have your eyes on it to make sure that you're comfortable and that your concerns are still addressed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Well, that's it for me.
No, you can stay here. She's on the last decision.
Yeah, no, you can stay, that's right.
Good night, guys. We next have our extension of time. Sivlin Realty LLC at 44 3 Mile Harbor Road, East Hampton, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-161-4-9, and it's an extension of a 2022 determination. We've seen a brief on this from the planning department. Morgan, you want to?
Yeah, so this is for a 2022 determination, as you just said, and that would make it the first extension of time for the approval. The original determination granted a variance for 11 parking spaces to make a total of 48 spaces, where 59 were required, and a dimensional variance to allow the second-story apartments and deck to be located within minimum side yard setbacks. A building permit has not been issued for the work, and the planning board approval is still valid because it did undergo site plan about a year after the zoning board's approval. And the conditions of the site are essentially the same as when the variances were granted.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? Oh, this is mine. Therefore, I make a motion as Sivlin Realty LLC, 44 3 Mile Harbor Road, East Hampton, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-161-4-9, to approve the extension of time.
Second?
Concur.
Concur.
Thank you. Now, John, you can.
We didn't
Thank you.
have the minutes on here.
You can stay.
Oh, there's the minutes.
He doesn't have to leave.
You can vote on the minutes too. no? We'll have 6 votes on the minutes. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the draft minutes for Tuesday, March 18th, 2025 for the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals.
Second. Make myself
Welcome back.
useful, thank you.
Concur.
Concur.
Concur, thank you. We have a resolution this evening, Michael Palladino at 124 Old Westlake Drive, Montauk, Suffolk.
We don't have it?
No, we don't have
Okay.
I didn't see it.
We don't have it?
Sorry.
Not yet.
Okay, so no
I had
resolutions.
it, but I didn't.
Good news.
It was too late to send. I won't
Okay,
do that.
so no resolutions.
Yeah, I have so many to send you next week. 4 next week.
Great.
Oh, good. That sounds good. I like that.
All right, so we'll table it.
Vice Chair?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting of March 25th, 2025 of the Zoning Board of Appeals at 7:47 p.m.
Second.
Concur.
Concur.
Concur, thank you.